Yeah, this is a position group where there's going to be some battles. There are going to be some competition during fall camp. A big reason why there's going to be more competition, there's going to be increased competition, is the spring's likely season-ending injury to Evan Stewart and the loss of production at wide receiver from last season. So, I mentioned before, the injury to Evan Stewart, he was really expected to step up and be a big-time target, maybe a 1,000-yard receiver in this offense. You lose Tez Johnson, who had 2 really good years with the Ducks. And then you lose Trayshawn Holden, who was also really good at Oregon. Now, where does that production come in? Now, when I looked at the roster, there are 13 guys with the WR next to their name. I put an even number of guys because of the 2 columns on my graphic here in YouTube. So, Billy Bidwell, you're kind of on the outside looking in as of this point in time. But here's what Oregon is working with at wide receiver. Dakorien Moore, the true freshman, ever heard of him? Malik Benson transfers in from Florida State. He's a senior. Gary Bryant Jr. coming off of an injury. He is a redshirt senior. Justice Lowe is a redshirt junior. Jeremiah McClellan took his redshirt last year. He is a redshirt freshman. Jurion Dickey is a redshirt sophomore, the former 5-star. Kyler Casper is a redshirt junior. Dylan Gresham had his red shirt last year. Hell of a spring game. He is a redshirt freshman. Cooper Perry is a true freshman. Jack Ressler is a redshirt freshman. Darian Anderson is a redshirt junior. And Jalen St. Paul is a redshirt freshman. A lot of red shirts taken within that group. The only guys that are not red shirts, Dakorien Moore, Cooper Perry, because they're both true freshmen, and then Malik Benson as well. When I start to look around this room, post Evan Stewart, he's number 1 on his jersey, but Dakorien Moore has to be number 1 in more ways than one. I think with like Evan Stewart in this rotation, with the possibility of him maybe being close to a 1,000-yard receiver, it put maybe a little less pressure on Dakorien Moore. He certainly still had the expectations to be like a Ryan Williams type, maybe even close to a Jeremiah Smith type of wide receiver. But now the weight of Oregon's passing offense with Dante Moore throwing the football around is on the shoulders of Dakorien Moore. And maybe Dakorien Moore was going to get there regardless. Maybe he was going to go on the field and show that he was number 1 in more ways than one, even with Evan Stewart in the lineup. But now he's got to be that guy. He's got to be the playmaker. And we'll get to the question with playmakers as we get to a little bit later on during this preview. But that's got to be the go-to guy. You're asking a lot. Now, we know he's insanely talented. Okay? But you're asking a lot of a true freshman right away to be able to step up into that role. But anytime everybody is talking about Dakorien Moore, whether it's been in these spring press conferences in Eugene, or whether it's been in podcast interviews, or whatever it's been, everybody talks glowingly about Dakorien Moore. Where do I see Dakorien Moore? When you take a look at production of some of those super frosh wide receivers from last year, you're looking at Alabama's Ryan Williams, Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State. These are guys that are on the College Football 26 video game. I think that he could be somewhere between these two. Like, Jeremiah Smith is just an absolutely freakazoid, freak of nature type of guy. So I don't know if he's going to get to that level of production, like that 1,200 yards, 1,300 yards in year one. Maybe he could. It's a possibility. But I think that he could certainly be above where Ryan Williams was. Maybe right around that 1,000-yard season is, I think, where he's expected to be now without Evan Stewart. I think with Evan Stewart in the lineup, 1,000 yards wasn't the expectation. But circumstances have changed. The status quo has certainly changed. And Dakorien Moore needs to be able to rise up to that level. We talk about the battles at the start of this thing. Before it was, okay, you felt good about Evan Stewart. You felt good about Dakorien Moore. Okay, there's your 1, there's your 2, wherever you want to put him on the field. And there was one battle. Okay, who's going to be wide receiver 3? Who's going to be wide receiver 3? When I talked to Justin Hopkins of Scoop Duck, when we previewed spring football, that was one of the big questions. And he was saying that this thing was not going to be decided until the fall. Now it's not just who's going to be wide receiver 3, but who's going to be wide receiver 2. Who's in that battle? I think everybody kind of wants to know that, and there is a big cluster of names. I think the names that you got to throw up, Malik Benson. Okay, I think now we talk about expectations rising up for Dakorien Moore. I think expectations rise up for everybody. Everybody's got this opportunity, and Malik Benson is another one of those guys. Like, top junior college player in the country at one point, played at Alabama, played at Florida State. Now it's time to make an impact. And this could be the opportunity that Malik Benson really needs to be able to shine in this offense, to be able to be looked towards a little bit more from Dante Moore throughout this offense. I've talked about the veterans before, and I think if you throw Benson into there, you got to throw Gary Bryant Jr. into there. You got to throw Justice Lowe into there. Like, one stat that I was looking up in the preparation of talking about the wide receivers is this. Only one wide receiver that is going to be in this fall camp healthy and ready to go had more than 3 catches last year. Justice Lowe had 21 catches. Okay, McClellan had 3. Gary Bryant Jr. had 2. He was out with an injury for a lot of the year. Jurian Dickey, Kyler Casper both had 1 catch. Kyler Casper got hurt early in the year last season. So got to have these guys stay healthy. I think that's a big thing as well. But now there's a ton of opportunity for guys to really be in this competition, to be able to step up to get more of an opportunity. I think you're going to see Malik Benson. I think you're going to see Gary Bryant Jr. I think you're going to see Justice Lowe. I think you're going to see Jeremiah McClellan, Jurian Dickey, Kyler Casper. That's 6 guys for 2 spots. 6 guys for 2 spots is, I think, that's what's going to be the battle that's going to take place during fall camp. We saw Dylan Gresham. He's maybe a little bit of a wild card and a little bit of a dark horse to keep an eye on, especially coming out of the slot. But, you know, he had a really good spring game. But I still think that, he's just a second year in the program. He's a redshirt freshman. So although he certainly flashed, I still think that a lot of these other guys are more talented than he probably is right now. But I certainly think he could have a role. The speed that he flashed and the explosiveness that he flashed coming out of the slot during the spring game. A lot of good things have been said about true freshman Cooper Perry as well. I'm not saying he's going to step up and win wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3, certainly, but just be aware that he can add a lot of depth, certainly, to this room as well. How many playmakers? Like, we can talk about all these names, and we can throw around all these names at wide receiver 2 and wide receiver 3, and this guy, and this guy, and this guy, and this guy. Right now in that battle, the guys that really stand out to me that would be like, oh yeah, they could be, realistically, I would feel really good about them being in these roles. I think Jurian Dickey, we know the talent that he has. I've talked to some people within the program, and they say that he's had the best spring. He's had the best spring that he has had, and that is an encouraging sign for somebody that's kind of battled some stuff since arriving in Eugene as well. Like Jurian Dickey, Malik Benson, maybe Gary Bryant Jr., and maybe Jeremiah McClellan are guys that I look to and be like, okay, those could be explosive options alongside Dakorien Moore. So, like, kind of getting back to my point, we can talk about all these names until we're green and yellow in the face. But I think the thing that we're really looking for is who's going to be a playmaker. Okay, because I think there's guys on this list of wide receivers right now that can get open, they can run an 8-yard out, they can get a first down. But how many of these guys can run an 8-yard out, put his foot in the ground, turn around, break a tackle, and turn it into 20 yards? I got a good feeling Dakorien Moore is certainly a guy that can be a playmaker. How many guys can win a one-on-one matchup, beat a guy on a deep post 20 yards, and put the burners on and go 50 yards for a touchdown? How many of those guys really exist in this room? So a lot of people are going to throw around a lot of names, but when I look to fall camp, that's what I want to know. I think that's what the coaches want to know, because you don't want Dakorien Moore that can do, you don't want that added pressure on Dakorien where he's the only guy out there, or close to the only guy. I know Sadiq's playing at tight end, and we know he's going to be a playmaker as well. But at wide receiver specifically, you don't want Dakorien Moore to be like the only guy that can go out there and be a true playmaker. So I think throughout fall, you want to find out certainly everybody's role. You want to find out who's standing out above the pack, but you also want to find out who can really go out there and make plays. Who can help out a first-year starting quarterback in Dante Moore to be able to get open consistently and create explosive plays in the pass game. Like, you look at Evan Stewart last year in the Ohio State game, what he was able to do. You look at Tez Johnson, like the Big Ten championship game against Penn State and so many other games throughout the last couple of years. You have multiple explosive options. You go back to 2023, Troy Franklin was an explosive option. Oregon at wide receiver has had multiple explosive options within their offense. Who is that other guy? Who are those two other guys? Like, not everybody needs to be super explosive, but you need at least another guy alongside Dakorien Moore to be able to stand out. And I think it's the guy that proves that he can do more, if you want to say do more with less, and really create something big out of maybe a little situation. I think it's those guys that are in the end going to get the nod and have a favorable chance to see more snaps and be into those number 2 roles and be into those number 3 roles as well at the wide receiver position. This is one of the most intriguing position groups as we go into fall camp. There's a feeling of an unknown, but there's also a feeling of an excitement when you look like there could be a lot of depth, but there's also, we just don't know how many of these guys are going to be true playmakers. We don't know how many of these guys are truly going to be ready to step up into a starting role. But hey, that's what fall camp is for, baby.